and their families. And today, as they do every day, they're keeping America safe. They're defending our homeland. They're standing up to communist China. They're working hand in glove with our allies and partners. They are achieving peace through strength. I'd like to start today by thanking this committee and Congress for your bipartisan leadership to give our troops a big pay raise in 2025. This included an additional 10.5% raise for our junior enlisted service members, E1 to E4. Thank you also for supporting other initiatives that improve the quality of life for our warriors and their families. With a focus on our troops and their loved ones, we have directed additional actions that will further improve their quality of life. These include making historic investments in this budget to improve living conditions in barracks and base housing, reforming the PCS process to reduce the cost and stress of moves for military families, and improving the quality of the care provided by our defense healthcare system. The best part of our job is meeting and interacting with troops and their families. We hear their concerns. I know how it feels to face these challenges. I've been there recently. Each of these initiatives responds to feedback we have received from the force. We will keep listening and keep looking for ways to improve their quality of life. Under President Trump's leadership, this budget puts America first and gives our warriors what they need. The $961 billion budget request, more than $1 trillion in total for national security, ends 4 years of chronic underinvestment in our military. Now, as is customary with first-year administration budget releases, additional time was necessary to implement this president's initiatives. In the last 4 months, we've moved quickly to reverse course after 4 years of weakness and mismanagement. In that 8% exercise, we found nearly $30 billion in savings across the department, which we reinvested. We killed wasteful programs, targeted bureaucratic excess, and redirected funding from Biden-era priorities to President Trump's priorities. Working with the Department of Homeland Security, we have increased border security. We reduced China's malign influence in our hemisphere. We defended freedom of navigation in the Red Sea. However, we still have a lot of work ahead of us to achieve peace through strength. A lot of deferred maintenance to catch up on. To carry out the president's mission, we have set 3 priorities for the department. Restore the warrior ethos, rebuild our military, and reestablish deterrence. First, we are restoring the warrior ethos. President Trump charged me to focus relentlessly on warfighting, lethality, meritocracy, standards, and readiness, and that is exactly what we've done since day one. We are refocusing on what is truly important, which is warfighting and our warriors, sweeping away distractions and bureaucracy. We are setting standards that are high, equal, and unwavering. DEI is dead. We replaced it with a colorblind, gender-neutral, merit-based approach. Our force is responding incredibly to these changes. Because of President Trump and his America First priorities, recruitment and retention under this administration are higher than they've been in decades. Historic numbers of young Americans are putting on the uniform and raising their right hand because they believe in the leadership they see. This budget provides a historic level of funding for military readiness, putting our warfighters and their needs first. Second, we are rebuilding our military. 25 years ago, our military was unchallenged. Yet we squandered that advantage as China carried out an unprecedented military buildup. President Trump, as he did in his first term, is correcting those mistakes. And we're doing this by, as was mentioned multiple times, reviving our defense industrial base, reforming our acquisitions process and working with Congress to do so, and rapidly fielding emerging technologies and new weapons so our warfighters can meet the challenges of the evolving nature of warfare. This budget invests $25 billion in Golden Dome for America, a down payment on President Trump's priority to defend our homeland. It also commits more than $62 billion to modernize and sustain our nuclear forces as we face rising nuclear dangers. The budget allocates $3.5 billion for the F-47, the world's first 6th-generation air superiority fighter. The budget will also revitalize our shipbuilding industrial base with $6 billion in funding in FY26, bringing it to $47 billion in total we request for shipbuilding, after neglect from the previous administration. The budget also significantly increases funds to buy next-generation technologies that we need now and into the future: autonomous systems, long-range drones, long-range fires, and hypersonics. We will put these capabilities in the hands of our military. These steps will help us remain the strongest and most lethal fighting force in the world for generations to come. And third, we are reestablishing deterrence. When an opponent sees our well-equipped and tough-as-nails warriors, they will decide that today is not the day to test U.S. resolve. Credible deterrence starts at home. It starts with securing our borders. We will achieve 100% operational control of our southern border, and to that end, illegal crossings under the Trump administration have decreased 99.9%. The Indo-Pacific is our priority theater, and China is our pacing threat. That's why I've traveled to the Indo-Pacific twice already to visit our forces and meet with allies and partners. As we shift our focus to the Indo-Pacific, President Trump looks to our allies and partners to be force multipliers alongside the United States, and we are making progress on those fronts. We applaud allies who are stepping up, but others need to do more, and they need to do it quickly. And at the NATO Heads of State meeting later this month, we expect our NATO allies to commit to 5% of GDP on defense and defense-related investments, something that was almost inconceivable before President Trump led the charge in his first administration and continues in this one. As the President has rightly pointed out, it is only fair that our allies and partners do their part. We can't want their security more than they do. The Department of Defense is executing a common-sense agenda to achieve peace through strength. The threats we face are serious. Our investments to counter them must also be. That's what this budget does. It matches capabilities to threats. While we long for peace, we prepare for war, and we must overcome decades of neglect and decline. We must fortify our position as the world's most lethal fighting force, and that means acting fast as our opponents are. This committee is our critical partner in everything we do. We appreciate your leadership and oversight. We look forward to accomplishing these goals, to achieving peace through strength, to supporting our warriors, to protecting our citizens and our taxpayers, together with you. May God grant us the wisdom to see what is right and the courage to do it. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary. General Kane, you're recognized for 5 minutes to summarize your opening statement.
Chair Rogers, thank you, Sir Ranking Member Smith, other members of the committee. I'm honored to join the Secretary here today and Ms. Bryn McDonald to appear before you to testify on the President's FY26 budget. Today's hearing reflects our shared commitment to maximize efficiency, accountability, and lethality and survivability through the investments that you make in us. Ensuring every expenditure increases the survivability of the joint force and providing our warfighters the advanced capabilities, cutting-edge technologies required to dominate our adversaries at scale. I've got deep gratitude for everyone in this room and your commitment to helping us deliver the capability and capacity of our joint force and the 2.8 million service members, civilians and their families, to help us deliver the peace through strength that the Secretary talked about is very important, and I'm very thankful. It's my responsibility as chairman to understand the global situation, integrate the joint force to confront and manage risk worldwide, and ultimately advise our leaders. This demands a comprehensive understanding across every domain: land, sea, air, cyber, space, undersea, and all military services in every region of the globe, and frankly, all time horizons. It also requires making hard, informed decisions, which we advise on, in order to prioritize the finite taxpayer dollars that we have to ensure the greatest impact and capability for our joint warfighters across the globe. The President's budget enables the joint force to defend our great nation from adversaries seeking to do us harm. We are relentless in our pursuit of innovation and technology that allows us to deter and, if need be, win the wars of the future at every opportunity, while ensuring that we learn from the battlefields of the past and position ourselves for the battlefields of the future. This budget empowers the joint force to get after the Secretary's three pillars, as he just talked about: restoring the warrior ethos, rebuilding our military, and reestablishing our deterrence, and ensures our joint force is properly armed, globally integrated, and ready while doing our number one job of protecting our homeland. The President's budget invests in our warfighters. As I said, to win on the battlefields of the future, we've got to be properly armed with the right capabilities, lethal, modern, reliable, and survivable at scale. Victory requires people and platforms that overmatch the enemy, systems that work together in the harshest conditions, and technologies that give our warfighters an advantage at the tactical edge. The budget gives us necessary tools to reinvigorate our national and defense industrial base. Our nation is full of incredible entrepreneurial talent, and we need every bit of it to support the increasing demands of the warfighters. This budget also helps the joint force become more globally integrated. I think of us as relationship entrepreneurs in the joint force, not only working together in the military, but working with our allies and partners, the interagency, industry, and of course Congress before crisis begins and before conflict comes upon us. Finally, the President's budget reflects our mandate to stay ready, always be on the account, anticipating the next fight, and getting out in front of it so that we're best prepared for our warfighters and their families. The most important component of our joint force is our people. This budget makes meaningful investments in our service members and their families, improving the quality of life of our service members, medical care, and things important to them like the moving process. As I mentioned, our people are the most important part of this, and it's an honor every day for me to serve alongside some of the most extraordinary warriors, civilian teammates, and families our nation has ever known. I assure this committee that the force remains ready, capable to defend this nation, but we've got some work to do. With your continued support and prudent investment, we will maintain our competitive edge, strengthen our advantage, and ensure that our men and women in uniform are equipped with the right capability. I also remain thoughtful of those currently deployed right now and their families who stand the watch around the world, quietly serving to do our nation's work so that we can be here in this room right now. And I also hold a special remembrance for our fallen and their families who continue to show us every day what real courage and tenacity looks like. I thank the Congress and this committee for your support and collaboration in our shared commitment to deliver peace through strength. I look forward to your questions, and again, I'm honored to be here.
I thank the witnesses, and I now recognize myself for the first questions. Secretary Hickseth, you've talked with me about this. We both know the President has a peace through strength agenda, and he's serious about it. And as I have talked to you about this, we are at the lowest level of defense spending as a nation in 80 years, and that has got to change. And I think that you and the President have sent a strong signal about wanting to get after that and change it with this year's proposed spending that includes the reconciliation package, which will put us over $1 trillion. It's a great first step. But as you and I both know, it's a 1 year. We're going to have to see continued funding, in my opinion, and growth in that top line in the out years. Do you share that opinion?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the baseline of our planning process for FY26 was working with our partners in OSD and the COCOMs and elsewhere, identifying threats that exist, the priorities of the administration, and what we need to spend to make sure we have those capabilities. And that was a reorientation from the previous approach of the previous administration. So that included exercises where we looked at reductions, where we could reinvest those into different priorities. So when you look at the two bills in one budget that add up to $961 billion and over $1 trillion, truly a historic investment, 13% increase, that was our statement to the president of what we think we need in order to spend and invest in ways that are postured for now and into the future. And what I would commit to you and to this committee is that in FY27 and 28 and 29, in this administration, we will perform the same exercise, knowing that threats, we believe that the policies of this administration will lead to peace and more opportunities. But as our adversaries continue to increase their capabilities and we learn about what's happening on the battlefield, that will lead to commensurate increases in ours. So we anticipate through that review that there probably will be increases, but I wouldn't put a number to it in the future.
Thank you. I just share the president's commitment that every NATO member nation should reach 5% of its GDP, and that includes us. And I think we can do it by the end of this president's term, and I'm determined to help him get there. Secretary Hegseth, at the president's direction, you're developing a plan on reforms of DoD acquisition. Just so happens we are too. You may have heard of the SPEED Act. It's a bipartisan, bicameral effort. As you develop your plan, what problems have you identified with acquisition reform that need attention?
Well, our new A&S, Undersecretary for the A&S, was just confirmed. Mike Duffy, he's doing a fantastic job. He's diving right into this to include the SPEED Act, which we're reviewing in real time, that identifies a lot of the same problems we have. Streamlining processes, consolidating, we need competition and actual new entrants into acquisitions in a stale process. It's too bureaucratic. There are too many gatekeepers. Too many programs are gold-plated, which add to cost overruns and they're late to need. So throughout the entire process, we've reached out to industry and to innovators and to outside-the-box thinkers and said, what would you do? How have you looked at this problem? To include this committee, how would you attack this so that we can get what we need in the hands of warfighters faster? It's unacceptable in this real-time world we live in, where you've got off-the-shelf and off-the-shelf capabilities and open architecture opportunities, and you can do virtual design of products that you don't have to build a hard copy, that we're not doing it faster. So everything necessary we want, and we're going as fast as we can.
Great, thank you. General Kane, as you know, there's been a lot of dialogue around here about selling off some of our spectrum. Can you talk to us about the importance of preserving the spectrum around the lines that the DoD uses?
You bet, sir. Spectrum is a critical part of our warfighting enablers, and as the administration and the Congress carefully consider the slices that we must preserve, there are certain areas within that my military advice to the Secretary and others is to hang on to that. I'm grateful that the deputy's been really leading this effort with the Congress and to sort of measure risk. I understand that economic security is also national security, so the truth is always somewhere in the middle, but there are some segments in the lower end that frankly I would strongly recommend we preserve and protect for defense matters.
I raise that because I want you to know we're going to be taking our cues from you, and if you're against it, I'm going to be against it. With that, I'll yield my time, yield back and recognize the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on the budget point, I made this point before the committee, before the House just passed a budget that adds nearly $3 trillion to an already out-of-control debt. So if we do really want to spend money on defense or anywhere else, we ought to be willing to pay for it. And this, certainly go back through generations, bipartisan problems with this. You can't have a debt that size and keep coming back talking about how much money you're going to spend, whether it's defense or whatever your priorities are. And Mr. Secretary, you said the 99% down on border crossings and the border is secure. At the same time, we're going to take $1 billion out of the MILCON budget, out of building barracks, to send it for the border, and there's another 4,000 troops that we're planning on sending down to the border. Given that the border is secure, might you rethink that spending?
Well, sir, we are securing it. It is secure, but it's a manpower intensive effort at the
Two
beginning.
different words there. It's either secure or secure, and it sounded to me like you said it was secure.
It is secure.
Okay.
What we're continuing to do is expand that and fortify it through infrastructure, which is a big part of the budget on the Department of Homeland Security side as well. So it's that $1 billion you're talking about was from the CR in FY25. We fully fund that back and more in FY26 with the recognition that we were dealing with the world as it existed when we came in. And the previous administration said they needed new legislation to secure the border. It turns out you just needed a new president.
I would point out
president
that
with
you
the
have not
Defense Department and
submitted-
DHS that was willing to go to the border
you
and
have
actually secure it, which is what
not submitted a budget yet. So whether or not you're putting that money back in remains to be seen. You have definitely taken it out. And I think the obsession there, and I don't disagree, the border needed to be secure. But from a pure budget standpoint, let's just not keep the political focus on that. Let's make sure that we're funding some of the other priorities that we have. So when it comes back to acquisition reform and the chairman's point, it's our committee, certainly Congress is part of the problem. We set up a lot of requirements. Defense contractors are part of the problem. I'm curious, how would you get after reforming the culture at the Pentagon so that you can move faster, number one, and number two, how would you get after the defense contractors that push the requirements process? And specifically, what would you do about the requirements process to try to speed things up?
Well, first of all, I think gold plating is a real problem, sir. I mean, across the department.
Interesting to use the word gold in this particular context, but yes, I agree with you.
We maybe could use a little bit more silver plating on occasion. A recognition that the 99% solution is oftentimes the enemy of the 85% solution that delivers 2 years sooner. And that's contractors and other companies wanting to do right, but trying to do too much and overpromise, and then they're under-delivering.
Not always wanting to do right. In some cases, just
not always.
Just wanting to make money. But yes,
the change is also in acquisitions about people. You need reformers in these positions. I'm here to be a disruptor of those processes. Our deputy secretary has extensive business experience. The types of people we're bringing in as undersecretaries have been disruptors and innovators in the private sector who recognize that bureaucracy can be dysfunctional and needs to be disrupted. So it's taking outside the box unique approaches. I mean, virtual design is a big example. How many times are we going to build something physically that takes a year to build when you could use AI and computing power, design it virtually, identify the flaws, and move more quickly. Create open architecture. So you can
our committee stands ready to work with you.
I mean, there's 500
one
different
final
things we can
question.
do, and we're doing them.
Yeah, and I'm sincerely concerned about this. Is it the policy of the Department of Defense that we need to be prepared to take Greenland and Panama by force if necessary? Is this a policy that you have within the Department of Defense in accordance with the President's wishes?
I heard what you said about those two countries and saying we need to worry about China. Well, we are worried about China.
That wasn't my concern.
China's malign influence in Panama.
I was concerned with us using military force to take another sovereign country's
We should pay
territory.
attention to that.
Right.
So Panama is very key terrain that we've focused on, and we've been willing to focus
So we should
as
take it.
is Greenland
Should take
terrain.
it by military force. They're important. I'm not going to argue with that.
The Arctic is
I'm
incredibly
arguing with
important.
the
and
using
adversaries are
our
trying to
military to take it by force.
Our job at the DoD is to have plans. And
Do you have a plan for that?
Our job at the Defense Department is to have plans for any particular contingency.
Including the contingency of basically
Any
invading
contingency you need, we've got it. We've got a building full of planners, and we're prepared to give recommendations whenever needed.
Denmark. Just be clear. You have plans to take Panama and Greenland by force if necessary.
I think the American people would want the Pentagon to have plans for any particular contingency.
Not for that.
Thankfully, we are in the planning business.
Speaking on behalf of the American people, I don't think the American people voted for President Trump because they were hoping we would invade Greenland. I'm going to go out on a limb on that one. I yield back.
Gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson is recognized.
Thank you very much, Chairman Mike Rogers, for your visionary leadership. And indeed, each witness, thank you for your service to America. And in particular, Mr. Secretary, your service is so appreciated. And I'm especially grateful as the son of a flying tiger who helped liberate China, as the father of 4 sons who have served in Iraq, Egypt, Italy, and Afghanistan, as a 31-year Army veteran myself. Your leadership for peace through strength is crucial, and I believe we're in a Cold War we did not choose of dictators with rule of gun invading democracies with rule of law. It began with war criminal Putin invading Ukraine on February 24, 2022, and then Iranian puppets invading Israel on October 7, 2023, with the Chinese Communist Party threatening Taiwan. President Trump tried to deter war criminal Putin in his first term with Javelin missiles to Ukraine, American troops in Poland, and stopping Nord Stream 2. But Putin ignored Trump, and defying Biden has continued his efforts. Upon election of Trump, there were hopes for peace, but Putin insulted Trump with the murderous attacks at Christmas and New Year's. Every time President Trump tries to reduce the conflict, war criminal Putin increases mass murder of drones and missile attacks on the people and civilians of Ukraine, including hospitals this week. War criminal Putin is clearly fixated to resurrect the failed Soviet Union, with troops still in Transnistria, Moldova, rigging elections in Belarus, invading the Republic of Georgia, and rigging elections against the legitimate President Salome Zurishvili of Georgia. Additionally, there have been new threats this week against the Baltic republics, our NATO allies. Every outreach by Trump has been mocked by Putin. With that in mind, an incredible achievement of President Trump is to awaken our NATO allies, now including Sweden and Finland, that with Germany pledging now 5% remarkably, and 17 of our allies now provide a larger GDP support for the people of Ukraine than the United States because of President Trump's encouragement. What is the latest status on encouraging our NATO allies of providing for peace through strength?
Thank you for the question, sir. The one thing I would take issue with is the characterization that Vladimir Putin ignored President Trump. I think Vladimir Putin paid a lot of attention to President Trump in his first term, and that's why the invasion did not happen under President Trump's watch. Instead, under the weakness of Joe Biden.
Ignored and proceeded to
He paid attention under President Trump, and then when Joe Biden was in the office.
But it really set the stage, sadly, that if he had really appreciated what President Trump was trying to do, he wouldn't have invaded again, but whether Biden's president or not.
But to your question about Europe,
yes,
President Trump has invigorated a truly historic investment amongst NATO allies to shoulder the burden of the defense of the continent of Europe. Vladimir Putin saw what he believed to be weakness, and I believe President Trump stood up to that by reminding our allies that they need to spend on their own defense and ensure that they're able to shoulder the burden to defend the continent. That's been a good development.
And indeed, I was grateful last February coming back from the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe and meeting with the president, and I told him how exciting it was to see our allies understand that indeed he supports Ukraine, he supports NATO and peace through strength. And General Kane, I particularly appreciate your VMI credentials of professionalism, and with that in mind, we understand that even today, the International Atomic Energy Agency has declared Iran in breach of non-proliferation agreements, and what are we doing to deter the aggression coming from Iran?
Well, sir, first I noticed in your bio that you went to that other school in Lexington, which is always hard for me to get my head around, sir.
Hey, I grew up in the holy city of Charleston. When I saw Vimis, I thought they were Citadel cadets.
Yes, sir. I'm now a joint guy, so I'll keep all those comments to myself, sir.
Yeah.
You know, sir, throughout, the IAEA report is certainly troubling. The international community seems to be thinking about what they're going to do about it, and as are we, watching the situation develop and carefully monitoring the report.
Gentleman's time's expired.
America's in good hands with your
Connecticut, Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, this morning, the eyes of our closest allies, UK and Australia, are on your department as a result of Undersecretary of Policy Eldridge Colby's announcement last night that he's launching a 30-day review of the trilateral AUKUS mission. I would just note that it's not just their eyes, it's our eyes in this committee. In 2023, by a vote of 310 to a small minority, we passed the AUKUS authorities and followed up on that in terms of AUKUS investments in the billions of dollars into our submarine industrial base. Australia has reciprocated, as you know, with its own investments in our submarine industrial base. And since then, since 2023, what we've seen, the three countries working together, that we now have well over 100 Australian sailors and naval officers that have gone through joint training. I've seen them in my district at graduation ceremonies. They're joint crewing Virginia-class submarines. We also have joint U.S.-Australian submarine repair work that's happening in Guam and Hawaii. And our submarine industrial base last year delivered 2 Virginia-class attack submarines. They're New Jersey and Iowa. This year it'll be Massachusetts and Idaho, and the year following it's going to be Arkansas and the Utah are going to be delivered during that 3-year period. General Kane, how many nuclear-powered attack submarines is in the Chinese Navy? Do you know that answer?
It's nuclear-powered attack boats.
Yes.
It's
How many attack
yes, sir.
nuclear-powered?
Many. I'll get you.
No,
The
well, the
number.
answer is 6.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what we've seen in the industrial base is that last year, this year, and next year, we're going to be delivering that identical number. They're building a 7th. You can check the Wall Street Journal, and you can see where that boat ended up at the bottom of the Yangtze River because of their inability to actually do the hard work of building nuclear-powered submarines, which is probably one of the most complex undertakings in really industry of any sort. Again, the Australians are investing in Perth, and so that we are going to have rotations of Virginia-class submarines that are already started to happen. Admiral Paparo testified in vocal support of AUKUS when he came before this committee just a few weeks ago. And again, I would just say, there is nothing wrong with reviewing any program. We're all accountable. Anything of this magnitude certainly deserves review. But a 30-day review on a project that really took years to develop, in which this committee was instrumental in terms of in enabling. And in my opinion, China's reaction to AUKUS is the ultimate sort of endorsement of AUKUS because they hate it. And the one commitment I would ask, Mr. Secretary, is just your commitment that this committee in Congress is going to be integrally involved in whatever the review process is, because we have skin in the game, we have history, and we have allies who really are, again, issuing statements this morning. The Prime Minister of England, the Stephen Lovegrove, the Special Representatives for AUKUS, Richard Marles, putting out statements trying to reassure their countries that the U.S. is still going to follow through on this commitment. And we want that reassurance as well from you. Can you, again, give us that commitment that Congress will be involved in this review process? And I have one more follow-up question.
As it has been, Congress will be involved, but I've had an ongoing review myself. I've spent a great deal of time.
Thank you.
Marles and Healy at the Australia and
I've been following your
reviewing
work
it myself.
Yes.
Secretary Colby's reviewing it. We know that. It's all important to make sure it's
right. The State Department, by the way, has skin in the game too, and they should be involved in it as well. I just want to reiterate Mr. Rogers' point and Mr. Smith's point. If we really care about strengthening the industrial base, we need to have procurement stability, which means we need to have a budget, a real budget, not a $20 billion shipbuilding budget, which Senator Wicker just eviscerated a couple of days ago. That's $17 billion less than the last Biden shipbuilding budget. That's what got sent over to us. And again, that's the way, and I represent a district that is the general contractor for both programs. You want to strengthen hiring, supply chain, and facility growth. You need to have procurement stability. That's not what we're seeing from the Office of Management and Budget. I yield back.
Chair, now recognize the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Turner.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for your written statement, and also thank you for your recognition of the importance of our nuclear deterrent, and specifically our investment in our modernization of our nuclear deterrent. We are behind, as you know, in the modernization of our nuclear stockpile. Your recognition of our investment in our triad and our command and control is incredibly important. Thank you also for your recognition of the importance of our future investment in missile defense and the importance that the Golden Dome will play. The Secretary General of NATO has recently made statements of his concern of Russia's future attempt to place an anti-satellite nuclear weapon into space. Specifically, he said, "We are aware of reports that Russia is examining the possibility of placing nuclear weapons in space. This is very worrying. Space is also very important for our deterrence and defense, just as important as land, sea, air, and cyberspace. In recent years, space has become increasingly clouded, dangerous, and unpredictable. We know that competition in space is fierce. I recently had the opportunity to speak to him. He was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in my community as we were commemorating the 30th anniversary of the peace accords. His concern was that this is not getting worldwide enough of attention. We had General Saltzman recently in front of the committee. He has characterized that if Russia were to place an anti-satellite nuclear weapon into space, that would be day zero, that if that was put in space, that next day, that it would be irresponsible for us to count on space, that we would have to spend trillions of dollars and seek technology that we don't have to find solutions as an alternative to space, both commercially, for military, in really to redo what is really society today. As you know, it would affect both our nuclear deterrence, our efforts for missile defense, even our investments in Golden Dome. In this venue, obviously, we can't discuss all of the details of what we're doing, but I would ask if you would please confirm that this is a threat that is a priority to the Department of Defense, as it has been characterized by the Secretary General of NATO, and acknowledge that as it is a priority for us to prevent the deployment of nuclear weapons in space, and that it is a priority for us to work with our allies to uphold our commitment to the Outer Space Nuclear Treaty that prohibits the deployment of nuclear weapons in space. Sir.
Thank you for the question, sir. As you alluded to, there are a number of aspects to this question or answer that can't be discussed here, but I would underline our complete commitment to the space domain, to the hardening of the space domain, to prevention of escalations in the space domain, but most importantly, to the dominance of the space domain. I mean, that is, it is the future of how we see, it's the future of how we sense, it could be the future of how our adversaries fight and how we deal with that. So I think President Trump, yet again, was ahead of the curve when he created the Space Force in his first administration. People said we didn't need it. We are relying on it every single day now to ensure, alongside the Space Force and private enterprise, that we're delivering the capabilities we need that are resilient, that are redundant, that are capable of all aspects of all domain warfare, if necessary. And preventing adversaries from gaining an advantage is a huge part of how we look at space.
This threat is not classified. Russia's threat of deploying an an anti-satellite nuclear weapon in space is not classified. Obviously, this is a priority for the Department of Defense.
I want to say a few words about the events of the last few days. This past weekend, federal agents conducted large-scale workplace raids in and around Los Angeles. Those raids continue as I speak. California is no stranger to immigration enforcement, but instead of focusing on undocumented immigrants with serious criminal records and people with final deportation orders, a strategy both parties have long supported, this administration is pushing mass deportations, indiscriminately targeting hardworking immigrant families, regardless of their roots or risk. What's happening right now is very different than anything we've seen before. On Saturday morning, when federal agents jumped out of an unmarked van near a Home Depot parking lot, they began grabbing people, a deliberate targeting of a heavily Latino suburb. A similar scene played out when a clothing company was raided downtown. In other actions, a U.S. citizen, 9 months pregnant, was arrested. A 4-year-old girl taken, families separated, friends quite literally disappearing. In response, everyday Angelenos came out to exercise their constitutional right to free speech and assembly, to protest their government's actions. In turn, the state of California and the city and county of Los Angeles sent our police officers to help keep the peace. And with some exceptions, they were successful. Like many states, California is no stranger to this sort of unrest. We manage it regularly and with our own law enforcement. But this, again, was different. What then ensued was the use of tear gas, flashbang grenades, rubber bullets, federal agents detaining people and undermining their due process rights. Donald Trump, without consulting California law enforcement leaders, commandeered 2,000 of our state's National Guard members to deploy on our streets, illegally and for no reason. This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. That's when the downward spiral began. He doubled down on his dangerous National Guard deployment by fanning the flames even harder. And the president, he did it on purpose. As the news spread throughout LA, anxiety for family and friends ramped up. Protests started again. By night, several dozen lawbreakers became violent and destructive. They vandalized property. They tried to assault police officers. Many of you have seen the video clips of cars burning on cable news. If you incite violence, I want to be clear about this. If you incite violence or destroy our communities, you're going to be held to account. That kind of criminal behavior will not be tolerated. Full stop. Already more than 220 people have been arrested, and we're reviewing tapes to build additional cases, and people will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Again, thanks to our law enforcement officers and the majority of Angelenos who protested peacefully, the situation was winding down and was concentrated in just a few square blocks downtown. But that's not what Donald Trump wanted. He again chose escalation. He chose more force. He chose theatrics over public safety. He federalized another 2,000 Guard members. He deployed more than 700 active U.S. Marines. These are the men and women trained for foreign combat, not domestic law enforcement. We honor their service. We honor their bravery. But we do not want our streets militarized by our own armed forces. Not in LA, not in California, not anywhere. We're seeing unmarked cars in school parking lots, kids afraid of attending their own graduation. Trump is pulling a military dragnet all across Los Angeles, well beyond his stated intent to just go after violent and serious criminals. His agents are arresting dishwashers, gardeners, day laborers, and seamstresses. That's just weakness masquerading as strength. Donald Trump's government isn't protecting our communities. They're traumatizing our communities. And that seems to be the entire point. California will keep fighting. We'll keep fighting on behalf of our people, all of our people, including in the courts. Just yesterday, we filed a legal challenge to Donald Trump's reckless deployment of American troops to a major American city. Today, we sought an emergency court order to stop the use of the American military to engage in law enforcement activities across Los Angeles. If some of us could be snatched off the streets without a warrant, based only on suspicion or skin color, then none of us are safe. Authoritarian regimes begin by targeting people who are least able to defend themselves, but they do not stop there. Trump and his loyalists, they thrive on division because it allows them to take more power and exert even more control. And by the way, Trump, he's not opposed to lawlessness and violence as long as it serves him. What more evidence do we need than January 6th? Ask everyone. Take time, reflect on this perilous moment. A president who wants to be bound by no law or constitution, perpetuating a unified assault on American traditions. This is a president who in just over 140 days has fired government watchdogs that could hold him accountable for corruption and fraud. He's declared a war on culture, on history, on science, on knowledge itself. Databases, quite literally, are vanishing. He's delegitimizing news organizations, and he's assaulting the First Amendment. And the threat of defunding them, that threat, he's dictating what universities themselves can teach. He's targeting law firms and the judicial branch that are the foundations of an orderly and civil society. He's calling for a sitting governor to be arrested for no other reason than to, in his own words, for getting elected. And we all know this Saturday. He's ordering our American heroes, the United States military, and forcing them to put on a vulgar display to celebrate his birthday, just as other failed dictators have done in the past. Look, this isn't just about protests here in Los Angeles. When Donald Trump sought blanket authority to commandeer the National Guard, he made that order apply to every state in this nation. This is about all of us. This is about you. California may be first, but it clearly will not end here. Other states are next. Democracy is next. Democracy is under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. He's taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project. 3 co-equal branches of independent government. There are no longer any checks and balances. Congress is nowhere to be found. Speaker Johnson has completely abdicated that responsibility. The rule of law has increasingly been given way to the rule of Don. The founding fathers, they didn't live to die to see this kind of moment. It's time for all of us to stand up. Justice Brandeis, he said it best. In a democracy, the most important office, with all due respect, Mr. President, is not the presidency, and it's certainly not governor. The most important office is office of citizen. At this moment, we all need to stand up and be held to account, a higher level of accountability. If you exercise your First Amendment rights, please do it peacefully. I know many of you are feeling deep anxiety, stress, and fear, but I want you to know that you are the antidote to that fear and that anxiety. What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him.
This video right here never really.
To prevent ICE from doing their job.
Congressman,
Isn't that right?
That is incorrect, Congressman. We follow the same laws.
Well,
We're in the Minnesota House. The law does not change.
If you'll allow me, I've got limited time. Well, that's what you tweeted, by the way, sir. On May 23rd, 2018, you tweeted, quote, "I support policies that keep law enforcement from enforcing federal laws," close quote. On May 17th, just this spring, at the University of Minnesota Law School's commencement ceremony, you said, quote, "Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo is scooping folks up off the streets." When you said the words modern-day Gestapo, you were referring to ICE agents. Gestapo, by the way, sir, was the official secret police of Hitler's Nazi Germany. So you're calling ICE agents modern-day Nazis. Given the attacks on ICE agents that took place in Los Angeles over the weekend, don't you regard your dangerous, inflammatory rhetoric as a problem?
The questions you want me to answer first.
So, sir, it saddens me that you refuse to express regret from comparing ICE to Nazis. ICE agents are brave Americans who get up every morning, leave their families, and put their lives in harm's way to protect our country, sir. You, at the very least, owe an apology to these dedicated public servants. I will say, sir, inflammatory rhetoric such as yours and the other governors on this panel is responsible for putting a target on the back of every ICE agent who is risking their life to protect our communities. Minnesota is all too familiar, by the way, with the chaos that ensues when you refuse to work with law enforcement to enforce the law. In May 2020, looting, acts of violence, and arson occurred on your watch in Minneapolis after you refused to bring in the National Guard. Governor, your agenda is clear. Free healthcare, free college and driver's licenses for illegals while handcuffing law enforcement when they're trying to protect our citizens and their communities. If you think that's not a sanctuary state, you shouldn't be governor. By turning Minnesota into a magnet for illegals, you have opened up our communities to dangerous criminals, including known terrorists, gang members, murderers, and child predators. You have sent a resounding message that if you're a hard-working, law-abiding citizen of Minnesota, your safety and well-being are not the priorities of Tim Walz and his administration. But if you're coming to our state illegally, you're not only welcome with open arms, you're entitled to free stuff on the taxpayer's dime. This is absolutely disgraceful. Governor Walz, your sanctuary state agenda has been defined by your utter failure. You have failed to enforce the rule of law. You have failed to uphold our national sovereignty. And most importantly, you have failed the people of Minnesota. The time for radical sanctuary state policy, sir, is over. The voters made that clear last November when they elected President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance. You remember him, don't you? Governor, the time for real leaders and real leadership is now. And with that, sir, actually, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to introduce into the record the governor's tweet that I referenced from May 23rd, 2018, which makes it clear his hatred for federal law enforcement. Thank you.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr.
Chair
Chairman.
recognizes Mr. Mfume.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I have a unanimous consent request, and I'd like to present both of those to you at the same time.
Proceed.
Okay, I ask unanimous consent that we enter into the record an article from The Hill of the 8th day of June. Latinos for Trump co-founder blast inhumane immigration arrest.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, sir. And the second one is from the Independent of May the 28th. Trump ordered a critically ill 4-year-old Mexican girl to leave the country. Experts say she could die in days. And I ask unanimous consent.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes Mr. Kristamorte from Illinois.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Governor Pritzker, when it comes to immigration, you've been clear that Illinois follows the law. I'd like to go into this issue just a little further. First, there's been a lot of misinformation about the Illinois Trust Act. As you know, this is the 2017 law signed by then Republican Governor Bruce Rauner, which requires state agencies to cooperate with ICE when it presents a criminal arrest warrant for an individual, correct?
Congressman, yes, that's correct.
And just to be clear, the Illinois State Police, the Department of Corrections, and other Illinois agencies must cooperate with ICE when they present a criminal arrest warrant, correct?
And do every single time.
This is Illinois law.
Yes,
Donald Trump may not like state law, as we are seeing in California, but what Donald Trump likes is irrelevant. The law is the law. The Wall Street Journal reports that ICE's recent raids in California, including at a Home Depot in the LA area, were organized because the administration was falling way short of its cruel goal of deporting thousands of people per day. Politico said this is, quote, the standoff that Trump wanted. There's another reason why Trump has provoked the current situation in California. He doesn't want to talk about what he calls the big, beautiful bill and what I call the large, lousy law. So let's talk about what Trump doesn't want to discuss. What Trump doesn't want to discuss is that his large, lousy law cuts $625 billion in Medicaid, a program that insures millions of Americans. Governor Walz, in a press release on Medicaid cuts, you said Quote, the victims of these cuts will be families, children, veterans, rural Americans, and pregnant moms. That's what you said, right?
That's correct, Congressman.
And Governor Hochul,
Hi, Mr. Wonderful here. You know, I don't waste time, and I definitely don't waste money. I joined Start Engine as a strategic advisor and a shareholder and a paid spokesperson years ago because I liked where this company was headed. And now, the numbers speak for themselves. Start Engine just posted a $30 million Q1 revenue. That's not a typo. That's 3x growth year over year. That's an incredible number. Here's the part you need to hear, though. They're still raising money, but this round only lasts until June. Now you can join the future of startup investing. Of course, it's up to you. But just remember, this round closes next month. Take care, my friends.
Senior relies on. Let me turn to my final topic. Governor Pritzker, President Trump has called Illinois, quote, a poorly run state. But the truth, of course, is the opposite. Governor, Illinois has had 7 consecutive balanced budgets, right?
That's correct, Congressman.
And our credit rating has been raised 9 times in the last 6 years, correct?
After 21 downgrades under Republican and others.
And it now stands at an A rating, right?
It does.
In contrast, under President Trump, every credit agency has downgraded America's credit rating below the top level. The first time in history that's happened, isn't that right?
That's correct.
Trump and others claim the federal government props up Illinois. But in reality, we're one of 13 states in the country that actually give more tax revenue to Washington, D.C. than we receive in return. Now, let me turn to some of the reasons why Illinois is a donor state and not a taker state. Illinois has a $1.1 trillion economy. We produce the most soybeans in America, and we're the number 2 producer of corn, right?
That is correct.
We're the number 2 manufacturing state in the country.
We are.
And we're the number 2 destination for corporate expansions and relocations, right?
And Chicago is number 1.
Thanks to you, we have the world's first quantum and microelectronics park, correct?
That's right.
And we're ranked top in the Midwest for workforce development, correct?
Yes, we are.
And startups.
That's right.
Illinois is the heart and soul of America, Governor. It's where the cell phone was invented, was home to the first McDonald's, and was the home of amazing leaders. Lincoln, Reagan, Obama, Grant, even Superman, and yes, the Pope. And here's a picture of the Pope wearing a Chicago White Sox cap. The next Pope's going to be a Cubs fan.
There you go.
Illinois has terrific jobs, people, and pizza. Some may even say that God is on our side, Governor. I'm proud to be from Peoria and always stand up for Illinois, loud and proud. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Mr. Jordan from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Hochul, 3rd paragraph, 2nd sentence in your written testimony, you said New York State cooperates with U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement in criminal cases. Governor, who's Jesus Romero Hernandez?
Thank you. I want to reaffirm that we do cooperate in cases where...
That wasn't the question. I just read your statement. I can read your statement. Who is Jesus Romero Hernandez?
I don't have the details on every single person in the state of 20 million people.
I understand, but this guy's the citizen of Mexico, deported 7 times, came to your state, assaulted one of your residents with a machete, choked a police officer, then when he was in custody, assaulted a corrections officer. ICE finds out this guy is in your state's custody, and they send you a detainer. You're familiar with a detainer, right?
Yes, I am.
Notice of action, immigration detainer to Tompkins County Jail from Syracuse Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. Section 1, they check a couple boxes. The first one they check is a final order of removal against the alien has taken place. That means a court has said this guy needs to go. This machete-wielding, cop-choking, corrections officer assaulting guy needs to go. Then they also check another box and they say biometric confirmation of who this individual is, this alien's identity. So they got the right guy, and a court has said he needs to go. Any idea what Tompkins County Jail decided to do with that detainer order?
I will tell you this.
It's a specific question.
Well,
What did Tompkins County do?
The descriptions you have put forth are absolutely chilling and disturbing. and
course they are.
reprehensible to all of us. My job is to protect
is
the
why
people
I'm
of
asking
New
you the
York.
question. What did Tompkins County do?
What I have responsibility
I will
for
tell you,
are
since you're not going
state
to answer.
courts,
We
state
cannot
police.
and will not hold Mr. Hernandez. We can't keep the machete guy who had choked the police officer and assaulted a corrections officer. We can't keep him. In fact, we have the back and forth from Tompkins County and ICE on January 28th of this year, 8:56 p.m. Tompkins County tells ICE, we're not going to hold this guy. 7 minutes later, ICE responds back, we will be there to take custody this evening. 24 minutes later, Thompson County reiterates, we're not going to have him. We're not going to turn him over. 10:45. ICE arrives at the jail. 1 hour and 18 minutes later, and guess what? Mr. Hernandez is not there. They couldn't wait 1 hour and 18 minutes for a guy who assaulted one of your residents with a machete, choked a police officer, and then when in custody, assaulted corrections officers. That is sanctuary policy in a nutshell, and that is what your state supports, and so do these other governments. That is what is so wrong, why the American people hate this concept.
You're conflating what the state of New York does is I control state police and prisons. We have turned over 1,300 people.
So you disagree with it?
We turn over 1,300 people. Those are local policies that we would not have done in the state of New York. State of New York, that is
So
a
you're
local
saying the sheriff's
decision.
wrong?
I would say this, if it happened in a state prison, we have already turned over 1,300 people. In
Sheriff in
fact,
Tompkins County,
I want to say
Democrat or
this.
Republican, Governor?
There have been
Any idea?
times, excuse me,
Sheriff in Thompson County, a Democrat or Republican?
excuse me, there have been
Excuse me,
times
I
when
asked the questions, you give me
Well, I'm
the answer.
asking
See a Democrat or
for a
Republican,
second.
you know?
I'm asking for this moment to explain that I'm sometimes waiting
I'm
for
asking,
ICE
is he
to
a
come
Democrat
pick
or
up.
Republican, and do you agree with the actions
He's a
he took?
Democrat.
You agree with the actions he took? How about that question?
They are in conflict with what the state of New York would do.
Well, maybe they're scared. By the way, he is a Democrat chair. Maybe the county guys are a little scared because you said this. I'm quoting from, it looks like the New York Times. We all know you can trust them. This is last month, May 25th. You said we have some counties that are renegade counties and work with ICE. Maybe they're nervous of being called a renegade county by their governor. So the Democrat sheriff says, we're not going to keep the machete-wielding, cop-choking, corrections officer assaulting guy. We're not going to keep him here for you to get here. We can't even wait an hour and 18 minutes. Oh, you know what else was interesting in this case? You know what else was interesting? There was actually an arrest warrant from the United States District Court, Northern District of New York, signed by Judge Wiley Danks from Syracuse. There was an arrest warrant, and they still couldn't keep him.
The state of New York cooperates. We cooperate in removal of individuals who've served time. We respond to detention. You're confusing. Maybe there's a lesson in civics here
when you
that's
say on the
necessary.
record right here, I got 12 seconds. When you say on the record, was Tompkins County wrong in the actions they took on January 25th, 2025, when they wouldn't hold the guy for 1 hour and 18 minutes?
Those are not the policies that we would have in the state of New York. Those are not the policies we would have in
Were they wrong? So
Because I've already
they
said
turned that guy over to ICE. It's a simple question, Governor.
that was a horrible situation. The person should not have been out there, and
It's a horrible situation, but it's a yes or no question.
it is a response that this is a locality.
Do you agree or
In the state
disagree?
of New York,
Agree or
the person
disagree?
should have been held.
Yes or no?
Person should have been held, and in the state of New York, we would have turned him over. It is in conflict with what we would do as a state with respect to prison. And I want to know why ICE won't come and pick up the individuals who have served time in our state. I have cases where they have not even shown
Governor,
up.
a court order and a detainer for a guy who did the things Mr. Hernandez did, and Tompkins County can't hold him an hour and 18 minutes, and you won't say that's wrong?
I have said we cooperate when there's a criminal case where someone has committed a
This
crime.
is
We
sanctuary
turn them
policy.
over.
This is sanctuary policy in a nutshell. You won't even
You're
condemn something that
mischaracterizing.
anyone with common sense knows is ridiculous.
You're mischaracterizing. the
Chair.
laws of the
Yeah, I had
state
the
of New York.
facts here. Oh,
That's
can I
right.
do one other thing, Mr. Chairman? Now he's been rearrested, and guess what? This guy who's now been rearrested, there is imminent danger that this inmate will do injury to himself and to others and presents a threat to safety, security, and good order of the facility, so he's not permitted to leave his cell. So this guy's not even allowed out of his cell, but they let him out on the street a few months ago. That's how ridiculous this is.
When he does leave his cell, we go back to his country under our orders. for
Chair recognizes Mr. Mfume, and I'll give you an extra minute.
Mr. Chairman, I've got two unanimous consent requests that I hope would not count against my time.
Okay, we won't.
Okay.
Clock stop.
I ask unanimous consent to submit for the record an article from Forbes magazine entitled Trump Team Focuses Deportations on Immigration Numbers, Not on Criminals.
Without objection, so ordered.
And an article from the Rolling Stone from the 6th of last month entitled Trump has now deported multiple U.S. citizen children with cancer.
Without objection, so ordered. That's a good diversity of sources.
It is.
Forbes and Rolling Stone.
Yes.
I like that. All right. You're
Thank
proceeding.
you very much, Mr. Chair. A couple things on the record and then some observations. I don't know that I necessarily have any questions, but I do have some observations and a statement. I think before we let this get out of control, everybody on this side of the aisle is against violence of all forms. Everybody on this side of the aisle finds that to be unacceptable. We believe that convicted criminals who are incidentally illegally here and have been convicted should have no safe harbor. And we believe that victims of criminals should have our collective prayers and empathy. So this is not about Democrats not having a balance or about Democrats supporting something that is not right. The other thing that I want to say is that I find something eerily chilling about what's going on here. And what's chilling about it is that if I take myself out of 2025 and roll myself back in time, some of the hatred that I see displayed under the guise of good government just scares the hell out of me. We're not that far away from situations that existed where things like this affected other groups. And I'm not talking about anybody that's a convicted illegal criminal. I'm talking about innocent Americans who live in our neighborhoods, who do the work that we won't do, who abide by the laws, who play by the rules, who love their new country and who cherish their faith. Because if we just roll this clock on the wall back 75 years, we'd be looking at a time in Nazi Germany where people ran around with signs like this new ICE sign that says, report all foreign invaders to ICE, with Uncle Sam there holding up the sign. This could have been a Gestapo member 75 years ago, report all Jews. 100 years before that, it could be a plantation owner that said, report all Negroes and all coloreds and all those who are from Africa, because they are disrupting our country. So let's not get it twisted here. We in this country are not pure and pristine. We had runaway slave laws to kick the people who ran away from slavery. We had 50 years of black codes where you got fines and you got rewards and you got all sorts of things if you did or did not do something to report black people. After 150 years of slavery and 100 years of segregation and 100 years of Jim Crow after that, you could be arrested for anything in this country not that long ago. I remember when the National Guard was deployed in 1968, and I walked out of my house facing fixed bayonets with men in uniform.
Now, these Democrats, you gotta be careful. They had nothing to do. They had nothing to do with civil rights or freeing slaves. These Democrats were the ones capturing black people in slave states and taking them to the plants, the farms, and so forth. They did not have nothing. They were blocking the civil rights. It was the Republicans that passed the civil rights. These Democrats like to use history and then turn around and put themselves as the freedom fighters when they were the ones committing the crimes and doing harm to people. Democrats support slavery. That's why they bring in illegal immigrants to work for cheaper labor. And when these illegal immigrants get hurt or don't get paid, they call ICE on them. Don't believe anything these Democrats say.
Well, I went to visit a proud lady who this year will celebrate her 149th anniversary. And she stands today, even as we sit in this hour. In her left hand is a great torch. And in her right hand, guess what? She clings the Declaration of Independence close to her breast. And on her head is a crown of spikes. and on her feet broken shackles, symbolizing freedom from tyranny, the tyranny that so many immigrants face before coming to this country. And as that plane flew over, I could still hear her cry out through silent concrete lips.
Bullshit. Don't get no emotional with this dude.
Your huddled masses who yearn to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, she says. Send those, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. For I left my lamp beside the golden door, that all of you, and all of you, and all of you might follow. And so we came. Some took the circuitous route. Some came for a thrill.
This guy voted against black people getting reparations and told the black people, go ask the Mexican cartel if you can get your reparations. Don't believe none of this BS.
Our greatness. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Chair now recognizes Mr. Gill from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governor Pritzker, do you know how much illegal immigration costs your state each year?
No, sir, I do not.
Costs over $780 per family per year. That's a lot of money, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And may I ask, what do you mean by the
that
cost?
is a lot of money.
The cost of illegal immigration.
Let me ask you, do you know who Franklin Jose Pena Ramos is?
Are you talking about the federal government's
I'm
cost to
asking
the
you,
state
do you
of
know who
Illinois as a
Franklin
result of
Jose
the failed
Pena Ramos is?
immigration policy?
It's a yes or no question. I'll take that as a no. Do you know who Jose Martinez Rangel is?
No, sir, I do not.
You don't. You should. Those are two men who came into this country illegally, raped and murdered 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary in my home state of Texas. Do you think that elected officials should have welcomed them into our communities?
They don't care. As long as it's not in the white gated community,
Before they committed a crime?
they don't care.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Do you think that they should have been welcomed into our communities? It's a very straightforward question.
Someone who commits murder, no. Someone who commits murder should be
Why
outraged.
did you state during Biden's border crisis that illegal aliens, quote, should have been welcomed and helped by elected officials?
When you say asylum, you're mischaracterizing.
It is your position that they...
No, sir, I do not.
You don't. You should. Those are two men who came into this country illegally, raped and murdered 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary in my home state of Texas. Do you think that elected officials should have welcomed them into our communities?
Sir,
Question.
before they committed a crime, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Do you think that they should have been welcomed into our communities? It's a very straightforward question.
Someone who commits murder, no. Someone who commits murder should be
Why,
outraged.
why did you state during Biden's border crisis that illegal aliens, quote, should have been welcomed and helped by elected officials?
When you say illegal
I'm
aliens,
asking
these are people who are
people
given
welcomed and
asylum.
helped into our communities.
People who are
That's
asylum
it's a
seekers.
yes or no question.
You're mischaracterizing.
It is your position that they should have been welcomed into our communities. Is that correct?
There were
That's
asylum
from
seekers
your
who
own
were here
state.
legally.
And then they went on and murdered and raped 12-year-old Jocelyn.
Someone who commits murder should be held accountable. We do that in the state.
And you think they should have been welcomed into our communities before they did?
I don't know how you can tell before somebody commits a crime that they are
Secure the border and not let illegal aliens come into our communities. Do you support abolishing ICE?
asylum seekers.
Do you support abolishing ICE?
No, I believe we need an immigration force in the United States.
You don't.
In fact,
You believe a budget is a moral document, is that correct?
I do.
You do. You tweeted that. Your administration gave $12,000 to the Organized Communities Against Deportations, which just this past month was marching in the streets of Chicago with signs saying abolish ICE. Do you support this?
I do not.
Is this a reflection of
Abolishing
your
an
moral
immigration
values?
force.
Do you use it
In fact, I'm sorry.
Do you think men should be allowed in women's restrooms?
Well, I'm not sure why this has come to this issue.
You tweeted that as a protest against President Trump, everyone should use the other gender's bathroom today. Have you ever used the women's restroom?
Not that I can recall ever. So
You wanted everybody else to do it, but you didn't?
sir, I'm not sure why we're on a topic that has
I'm
nothing
asking
to do
you,
with
you're advocating for men to use women's restrooms, but you didn't do it?
I do not advocate that. No.
Well, actually, you did. You said everyone should use the other gender's bathroom today.
I can tell you that you are
You regret
politicizing
saying
this
this?
in a way that what we ought to be focusing on is
Do you regret
failure of the
encouraging
federal
men to
government
use women's restrooms?
and the Congress to deal with immigration reform.
Do you regret encouraging men to use women's restrooms?
Again, you're taking us on topics that have.
Did you ever consider that women don't want you in
subject
their
that you invited
bathrooms?
So you're admitting that this is just a political circus.
No, I'm asking you because you put
nothing
this
to do
on
with
the
immigration
internet for everyone
and
to
really
see.
about you grand.
I'm asking you, have you ever considered that women don't want you in their bathrooms? That's a private space that they don't want you or any other man in.
Congressman, let's talk about your
you can't say
failure
that
to
normal
vote
people
for
say that
Medicaid.
they don't,
In fact, you want to
that
take
they don't
Medicaid
think
away
men should be in
and
women's
SNAP
restrooms.
and
That's a
veteran
very
services.
straightforward question.
You apparently want people
And you're
to die
encouraging men to
in
use
the United
women's
States
restrooms
because
where
you
they're
want to take
underage girls. Do you think that's appropriate?
Sir, if we're going to
You think that's
politicize this,
normal?
let's talk about what you're doing to people in
You
this
think that
country
that's normal?
by virtue of your vote.
All right, let's move on.
with
Let's
President
ask,
Trump.
do you support Hamas's agenda?
Sir, I do not. They are a terrorist organization.
Your administration gave a grant to the Muslim Civic Coalition, which just 2 weeks after October 7th was marching in the streets of Chicago to, quote, stop the U.S.-backed genocide against Gaza. Is that a reflection of your values?
I have spent my life fighting anti-Semitism.
No, I'm asking,
my
is
life-
this a reflection of your values?
I'm not sure why you're attacking
Because
me
your
about something in an
administration
organization.
gave money to this organization.
I'm explaining to you that what we do in the state of Illinois is stand up for what we believe are.
You didn't have to
Right,
give money
freedom.
to the Muslim Civic Coalition.
People
to
have
march
the right to
called,
express themselves.
to stop the
We don't-
U.S.-backed genocide against Gaza. That was your choice.
I know
that was your
Republicans want to
administration.
take away people's right to free speech. We don't in the state of Illinois. And
They've got the right to
that
free
is
speech.
proper.
They don't have the right to tax dollars, and you gave them to them.
You want to take those rights away from people. I understand.
Gentlemen, time's expired. Chair recognizes Ms. Brown from Ohio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Trump administration isn't serious about public safety. It's not serious about solving immigration challenges. It's only serious about blatantly violating constitutional rights, stoking fear, and demonizing immigrants for political gain. That's why Trump is weaponizing ICE to recklessly and lawlessly target immigrant communities. And here's the reality. 2 weeks ago, I met with community leaders from across my district. Multiple Hispanic faith leaders told me the same thing. Their congregants, regardless of immigration status, are afraid. Afraid to speak Spanish in public, afraid to attend community events, afraid to go to church. Because ICE under this administration has shown it will harass, detain, and deport even wrongfully. No due process, no oversight, no transparency. And now we're seeing this fear weaponized at scale. Just this week, the president deployed 4,000 National Guard troops to Los Angeles without the consent or consultation of California's governor. So let's be clear. This isn't about border security. This is not about law and order. What it is really about is a reckless power grab. Militarizing American cities doesn't make anyone safer. It escalates and puts everyone at risk. So, Governor Pritzker, as Commander-in-Chief of your National Guard, how concerned are you about this executive overreach?
Thank you very much, Congresswoman, and thank you for the remarks that you just made. Our job as governors is to concern ourselves with the public safety of our states, and indeed, one of the very important things that we do is listen to our local law enforcement and listen to the local officials who ask us for help when they need it. We have probably, in my view, forgive me, governors, we have the best state police in the entire country. We have terrific 13,000 person National Guard. We go to our state police for support, and then, if necessary, we will ask the National Guard to step in. And again, only when local law enforcement and our local officials ask us for that help. When the President of the United States goes in over the top to grab our National Guard for domestic security, for domestic, when there is not, as he said in a...
The Oak Ridge Boys American-made farewell tour. Celebrating
rights and obligations of a governor. And it ought to be done in consultation with governors. In fact, the more local you get, the more accurate, I believe, the information is about what's happening on the ground. That's why I speak with local leaders of law enforcement, CPD in Chicago or others, before we take any action with National Guard. The President of the United States fails. Why? Because he wants mayhem in the streets. Why did he call in Marines?
And that's the point. This administration says it's targeting violent criminals, but that's not what's happening. They're going after parents dropping off their kids, workers showing up to their jobs, and asylum seekers navigating the legal system. And let me say this plainly. If you commit a violent crime in this country, you should be prosecuted. If you came here to do harm, this country is not your home. Governor Pritzker, can you set the record straight with which direction is violent crime heading in your state? Up or down?
Down significantly.
Thank you. And Governor Pritzker, across the country, undocumented immigrants are less likely to commit violent crimes than U.S. citizens. Does that hold true in your state?
Immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than people who already live there.
Now that may come as a surprise to some tuning in today, especially those fed a steady diet of fear. A recent poll found that Fox News viewers are twice as likely to believe the false claim that immigrants commit more crime. It's not true. It's not true. It's not true. So let's stop with the scapegoating and start focusing on real solutions. So quick yes or no's, Governor Pritzker. Did Trump's pardon of the January 6 defendants who violently attacked police officers make Illinois safer?
It did not.
Does blocking common sense gun laws like universal background checks make your state safer?
Absolutely not.
Did DOGE cuts to community violence prevention funding make your state safer?
Much less safe.
Would cutting Medicaid to pay for tax breaks for the wealthy make your state safer?
No.
Cutting SNAP benefits?
No.
Okay, so this is what we are dealing with this current administration. Things that are not making our country any safer and are doing harm to the people who need it the most. And with that, Mr. Chairman.
Dtla yields back chair, and I recognize Mr. Donalds from Florida.
Thank you, Chairman. To piggyback off my colleague, Governor Pritzker, how much does the state of Illinois spend on illegal immigration every year?
Again, illegal immigration, that's a federal responsibility. They could tell how much is wasted as a result of their failures.
Governor, don't you keep track of how many people are on your Medicaid rolls, how many people who are illegal immigrants in the state of Illinois who are getting actually benefits in your state? Doesn't your government keep track of that?
They don't get Medicaid in Illinois or any state as far as I know.
Governor Pritzker, you do not keep track of any public service dollars in the state of Illinois that goes to illegal immigrants or goes to people in your state who are not legal residents of the United States and of the state of Illinois. You don't keep track of that.
We absolutely keep track of our budget. We're very closely, and in fact, it's been balanced for 7 years in a row, unlike the Republican before me. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I noticed that in the state of Illinois, you guys don't really keep track of your money, because I asked your mayor in Chicago similar question about a month ago, and he didn't have an answer. It was quite interesting. I think this might be an Illinois problem. Governor Hochul, in your state, you are spending about roughly $4 billion on illegal immigration, and at the same time, you are actually asking the federal government for $4 billion to finish Penn Station. Don't you think it would be better to stop funding illegal immigrants in your state and actually use those resources to finish Penn Station as opposed to coming to the federal government for the money?
Penn Station is owned by Amtrak, not by the state, so it's an appropriate use of their dollars, and Donald Trump has agreed to spend upwards of $7 billion. I appreciated that very much. What we spend on immigrants, the immigrants who are here hardworking to live a life and working on our farms and taking care of our parents in nursing homes and taking care of our children, they have been coming here for 400 years. And we don't keep track of individuals based on their status. We make sure that people have services so we don't end up with an unexpected.
So essentially what you're telling me is that you keep no track of money that is going to people who are not legal in the United States, resources that are taken away from New Yorkers, resources that are taken away from Illinois. You guys do not keep track of any of this.
You know what's really challenging is that many people came here with legal status, temporary protective status, 300,000 things.
Do you
all of a sudden they wake up one day and it's
do you go along with the strategy from the Biden administration, which massively expanded immigration protocols that overwhelmed your city and overwhelmed your state. Do you agree with that?
We call for secure borders. We call for this body to
I
do
never
its
remember
job.
you calling for secure borders at
No,
all,
we
Governor
certainly
Hochul.
have.
That
We
doesn't
certainly
sound
have.
like it's in my memory.
Many conversations I had with the White House. We asked for federal resources. I mean, you're putting a federal problem on our laps, and you know what? It gets old after a while. I wish you would just do your job.
If your
sir.
party actually would do the job of securing the nation the way President Trump has now had to do twice, we wouldn't be in this predicament. Wouldn't you agree?
You're-
Do you agree or disagree
federal
that
job.
securing the nation's borders is the job of the President of the United States? President Trump has done that job twice now.
Well,
And previous Democrat presidents have not done that job. Wouldn't you agree with that?
this has been a problem that's been in place since I was a young staffer here on Capitol Hill. We worked on immigration, and Ronald Reagan signed amnesty for 3 million people.
You know, it's interesting you bring up Reagan's amnesty in '86. You know, part of that deal was to actually build border wall and secure it. But the Democrat Party refuses to build border wall. You oppose it every single time. Is that your position? Do you now support border walls?
There
Governor
has
Hochul?
been many times when bipartisan legislation is presented to this body and people just walk away from it. They refuse to do the hard work of governing like governors like us have to do every single day. When I leave here, I'm going to go home and govern a state. I'm not going to tweet about this experience because I have too much work to do taking care of New Yorkers. And
You're really not doing a good job, Governor Hochul, because a lot of New Yorkers are actually coming to my state, in Florida. Many of them. They come all the time because they actually want to come to a state that is well run, that protects citizens, does not allow illegal aliens to victimize citizens like they are victimized in the state of New York, like they are victimized in the state of Illinois, like they are victimized in the state of Minnesota. They choose states like Florida and Texas to find safer places to live and raise their families. Hold on, Governor Hochul. We've had enough
crime
time.
rates are much
Governor
lower
Walz,
than
you've been
yours,
sitting over there
much
pretty
lower.
quiet. I got a question for you.
I love to talk. Thank you, Congressman.
Fair enough. You said earlier that the ICE agents under the orders of President Trump are a modern day Gestapo. Do you realize how disgusting a phrase that is, considering the history of Nazi Germany? Would you like to recant that statement?
What I said, Congressman, and I have a long history of supporting law enforcement, I said President Trump was using them as his modern-day Gestapo, not identifying who you are, coming up in unmarked vans, taking people away and giving...
Is it the responsibility of ICE to actually deport illegal aliens in the United States who are here? Isn't that their responsibility?
Yes, it is, Congressman, except that the Constitution is not an inconvenience. It's not an either-or.
Nobody said an inconvenience. We have a responsibility to deport illegal aliens, and the president is going through that process right now. And let's be very clear, the previous administration, they abused every process there is under border laws to allow more than 10 million people into the country illegally. And this is a burden on all Americans. And so the president is doing his job. So it is sick to refer to Americans who are ICE agents as Gestapo. Governor, you're wrong. You need to apologize to these agents. They're doing their jobs. They are Americans. They serve this country with honor and decency and respect. Do not diminish their work simply because you tried to make a cheap point that you could tweet. I yield back.
Chair now recognizes Ms. Stansberry from New Mexico.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, some interesting theatrics today. Welcome, everyone, to the Oversight reality TV show. I know Mr. Trump loves himself some good TV, and today is not disappointing. And in fact, I want to say welcome to some of the members who've showed up to this committee who I've never seen here before. It's great to have you here in the hearing room with us. Now, before I get started on the topic at hand, I want to take a moment to speak directly to the immigrant community who might be watching and listening today. I want to say to everyone out there who is living in fear, we see you, we love you, we respect you, and we are fighting for you and every community that is being targeted by this administration and this Congress. We also want all of you out there to know that you have rights. You are protected by the law. And you should not have to live in fear and wonder whether or not you're going to be safe if you leave your home or if your family is going to come home at night. We see you. We are fighting for you. You have rights. Now, let's turn to the situation in California, which, of course, much of this hearing has focused on. As someone from a Marine veteran family, let me be clear. Marines are combat troops. They are highly trained, highly disciplined, lethal fighting force combat troops. And they should never, never be deployed against the American people who are exercising their constitutional rights. This is a gross and disgusting abuse of power. A disgusting abuse of power by fake tough guys who think that they can intimidate our communities while taking away their rights. And this is from the same man who dodged the draft and called our military service members suckers and losers. That's your commander-in-chief. And here, these folks here and the president want to say they're for our military and our veterans while they're illegally deploying service members, violating state sovereignty, gutting the VA, firing generals and lifelong service members. And you all want to sit in here and play like you're with the military and the American people while Donald Trump is planning to spend $45 million of your hard-earned taxpayer dollars on a fake military parade this Saturday that they can't even fill, that they put a super PAC ad on Craigslist to recruit citizens of the city of Washington, D.C. to go stand in the parade room. Congratulations, it's made for TV. But this is serious, because this is an abuse of power. So I want to read a list of grievances: obstructing the administration of justice, refusing to assent to the laws for the public good, sending swarms of officers to harass our people, keeping standing armies without consent of our legislatures, transporting Americans overseas to be tried for pretend offenses. Mr. Chairman, I wonder, do you know where these offenses come from? No? Aw, that's too bad, because it's actually the Declaration of Independence. That's right. It's the Declaration of Independence, and my colleagues across the aisle might want to bone up on that in the U.S. Constitution before they go attacking our communities, especially as we head into the 4th of July holiday and celebrate our independence from an abusive and mad king. Because here in America, there are no kings, and we reject people who believe they are. And no one is above the law, and we will hold them accountable. But I think it's very clear today, and I think it's been borne out by every witness that we have here, that what Donald Trump is doing is not only an abuse of power, an abuse of the military, an abuse of our citizens, but also, y'all should know this, while you're sitting here creating this made-for-TV moment, the 2/3 of Americans, according to the polling yesterday, are opposed to what Donald Trump is doing with both immigration and the deployment of the military in our communities. It's wrong, it's immoral, it's illegal, and it's a violation of our rights. With that, I yield back.
Chair recognizes Mr. Langworthy from New York.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Governor Hochul, yes or no, do you think someone who's committed murder or rape in this country and that they're here illegally should have tools at their disposal to avoid deportation?
As the governor, his primary responsibility is to protect the people of New York.
I'm sorry.
Those crimes are abhorrent.
I'm sorry. Whatever response you're prepared to give today dwarfs in comparison to your actions as governor. I would like to remind you of someone named Gianfranco Torres Navarro, an illegal alien and suspected leader of a violent Peruvian gang. He was tied to 23 murders in Peru and came to this country illegally across the southern border. He had his victims' faces tattooed on his body, and he was hiding in plain sight in Endicott, New York, for an extended period of time where ICE could not locate him. And why did it take so long to find him? Because policies like your green light law, which blocks ICE and U.S. Border Patrol from accessing critical DMV databases. In fact, it threatens the badges and threatens to charge with felonies any officer that shares that DMV data with federal agents. These agents rely on data to be able to know who they're pulling over on the side of the road. They're taking their lives into their hands every time they're trying to, keep our streets safe. The really sick irony here is that your government in New York, my home state, freely shares that same DMV data with the government of Canada at our bridges in you and my hometown. But it doesn't share that data with your American federal government. Why, Governor?
You're misstating the green light law because we are able to cooperate with federal authorities when there's.
Why do you shield the database, Governor?
Anything they want from us related to
investigating
a crime.
This is data that's needed in real time to enforce the laws on the streets. They can't subpoena these records from your government. And I've had these conversations with my county sheriffs all across the state of New York, state police. They want to work with the federal officials. They want to clean up these messes. But they can't because they are being threatened by you and our Attorney General that they'll take away their badge and end their careers.
Been countless instances where we cooperated with federal law enforcement. It happens on a daily basis. And so your characterization is just incorrect of how we provide information to people.
You share the database in its entirety with Canada, but you don't share it with the federal government. It's beyond belief. I mean, this is denial and excuses, Governor. You know damn well that the New York State Sheriff's Association and the State Association of Chiefs of Police have both condemned the green light law. Sheriffs from Erie County, Niagara County, Monroe, Albany, Broome, Dutchess, and Oneida counties, multiple parties represented here, not just Republicans, have warned that your law ties their hands. It puts officers' lives in danger and it shields criminals from accountability. When you refuse to work with law enforcement, when you refuse to hand over data that can protect communities and save lives, you are actively aiding the illegal alien criminals who have crossed our borders and committed violent crimes. And the consequences are not hypothetical. Your bail reform law is the reason that Laken Riley is dead. He should have been in jail in New York, and he wasn't. He went to Georgia. He fled our state because he should have been in prison. These are tragic and real circumstances. In Buffalo, a Venezuelan illegal immigrant hacked his wife to death with an axe. In Syracuse, an Ecuadorian national strangled a young woman on her birthday and dumped her body in a park. In Irondequoit, in Monroe County, a Dominican national slaughtered an entire family, including 2 toddlers, and he set their house on fire. Governor Hochul, you took an oath to serve the citizens of the state of New York, and you've allowed violent criminals who came here illegally to hide in plain sight and to avoid federal officials because of your support for the Green Light Law. I mean, this is an abomination. This is not keeping New Yorkers safe.
We turn over the information you're referring to all the time. You're misstating the laws and its purpose. We cooperate all the time.
As much as I want to believe you, Governor, I believe the cops more. I believe the cops that I know and I trust in our same hometown that are out there in the streets every single day. Your laws put lives in danger. Your laws have led to people being murdered.
My job is to protect the people of New York, and I fight hard every single day.
You're doing a very lousy job
of it, crimes. Murder rates are down to historic lows, and we're working hard to make sure one crime is one too many. I take this very seriously, but we do cooperate when anytime they need help with law enforcement.
That is just not what the law enforcement officials
You're just not
tell me,
accepting
Governor.
the facts. I can't help it.
I trust the professionals. You and I aren't police officers. I trust the people out in the field that wear a badge, that are honorable, decent, hardworking people.
And that's why they should
And you have a record of disrespect to law enforcement, just like you disrespected every corrections officer in the state of New York. You have a lot of gall to come here and criticize the president for using the National Guard to actually bring law and order to the streets of our country. When you sent those same National Guard officers to become corrections officers after you destroyed the lives of so many of the hardworking corrections officers in the state when you broke their union.
You're absolutely right. There is a distinction. I have the authority over the National Guard in the state of New York. The president is usurping the sovereignty of another state, of the 50 states, when he imposes the National Guard against the will of the governor.
Time is expired.
Of basic civics.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry?
I have a unanimous consent request.
Proceed.
First, I'd like to seek unanimous consent to enter into the record this article, counties that provided sanctuary to undocumented immigrants, saw falling crime rates, steady fines.
Without objection, so ordered.
Second, data shows sanctuary policies make communities safer, healthier, and more prosperous.
Without objection, so ordered.
And third, Trump team focuses deportation on immigration numbers, not criminals.
Without objection, so ordered. Chair now recognizes Mr. Garcia from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank our governors for being here as well. Thank you all for your service to your states and to our country. I want to just be clear, Donald Trump clearly and House Republicans are really not serious about helping our states and our cities. Before I came to Congress, I was a mayor and I worked closely with our police department, incredible men and women that worked really hard to promote policies that actually make the public safer. Now, during that time, our city actually reported some of the lowest murder rates in history. And I've been in close touch with our current police department, our local sheriff, and local law enforcement. And I want to be clear. Donald Trump is intentionally provoking chaos, hate, and division. Now, Trump is trying to intimidate. He's using our military to create fear, and there's no legal justification for his actions. I strongly believe he's trying to keep American citizens from peacefully making their voices heard. We just had a demonstration in my hometown of Long Beach, California. Over 500 people showed up. There was no vandalism, there were no arrests, and it was peaceful. And I want to thank them. Trump is trying to make it very clear that this is about intimidation. I believe he's fueling violence on our streets because he thinks it's politically helpful to him. And I actually want to remind our committee that when Donald Trump was president in 2020, that's actually when we saw surges in violent crime across the country. They increased under Donald Trump's watch. We should be focused on actual public safety threats, but we know that Donald Trump is taking federal law enforcement away from actually investigating serious crimes and cartels. And if you ask any police department, police chief across the country in your states, they will tell you they want their police focused on the issues in their neighborhoods, in the state, traffic violations, speeding, domestic violence. Those are the issues that people want to see addressed. Law enforcement should be focused on those issues, and I know the governors agree. Back in my home district in Downey, California, we've had agents just yesterday grab people in front of churches, their houses of worship. Agents refused to identify themselves and show warrants. An elderly man was dropping off his granddaughter at their local church and was detained in front of the property and the family. That is outrageous and should be disturbing to every single American. And we know that this does actually nothing to protect the public. But this, of course, is Donald Trump's playbook. He doesn't care about the safety of the American people. He fuels hate and fear. It's no coincidence that Donald Trump is fueling chaos. At the same time, he's advancing legislation which the American people know is completely toxic and harmful to this country. We're looking at 16 million people losing health care. It's being debated right now as we speak in the Senate. Nutrition cuts for seniors and veterans. Huge tax cuts for the wealthiest and the largest corporations in this country. And while this is being debated, Donald Trump is causing chaos and fear across our country. I want to ask the governors in the remaining time that we have. It is clear that healthcare and these impacts of this bill will impact all three of your states greatly. And so I have a brief question. What is the bigger risk to your state? Ripping away healthcare from millions of people across the country, thousands and thousands in your own states, or the law-abiding, working, undocumented folks in your states? And I'll let you each go ahead and give that answer. We'll start with Governor Pritzker.
Thank you very much, Congressman Garcia. There are 770,000 people who stand to lose their health care in the state of Illinois, perhaps even more, depending on how this bill turns out. And I can tell you that there are people who are dependent upon Medicaid and Medicare to survive. I am deeply, deeply concerned about the deaths that will occur as a result of the cuts, not to mention that we're taking away SNAP benefits from families that need it most, and children, veteran services, people who have PTSD, who need to see their therapist at a certain time, now have to wait much longer periods of time because of the threat of this bill. So I'm deeply concerned. DOGE has taken away one of our facilities in the state of Illinois already. It's a huge problem, and that is the threat.
Thank you, Governor Walz.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman. In Minnesota, in 2023, we were ranked as the top state for healthcare, home of the Mayo Clinic. We have more people covered almost than any other state. This bill would take 250,000 people off of healthcare, make it more difficult, reduce the outcomes we're getting. 40% of those are children receive their care through that way, and over 70% of nursing home patients. It would be catastrophic, and the state has built it up to improve lives of all of our citizens.
Thank you. Finally, Governor Hochul.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and I'm proud in the state of New York that 95% of people in our state have health care coverage. But these devastating cuts will throw off at least 1.5 million New Yorkers, and not just those individuals, but when hospitals in rural areas have to shut down, the entire community will lose important services. So this will have a ripple effect through our economy and hurt more than just the people who lose their Medicaid. And it is devastating and absolutely unwarranted. We encourage everyone to stand up, speak up on behalf of their constituents, especially those from the state of New York who represent rural areas. They're counting on you.
Thank you. Governors, I thank you, and I yield back.
Chair, now recognize Mr. Biggs from Arizona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I get a kick out of you sanctuary state, county, city leaders who talk about having to deal with the border crisis. Cracks me up, actually. At least, Governor Pritzker, you did call it a crisis in your statement. I appreciate that. Ultimately, as you said in your statement, you received 50,000 illegal aliens into Cook County. And Governor Hochul stated that New York received about 220,000 illegal aliens. That's fantastic that you know those numbers roughly. Now I want you to imagine you're a southern Arizona community of about 80,000 people, sitting right on the border. And over the course of the Biden administration, a couple of million people came through your little town. And I quote you, Governor Pritzker, Illinois didn't ask for this crisis. I'm going to tell you, neither did Yuma, Arizona. Its lone hospital, only hospital, couldn't handle the influx. Nor could its single food bank, its law enforcement, its schools, and other services and infrastructure. That was a failure, you're correct, on the part of the federal government under Joe Biden. Let's all stop now. Let's all stop now. Because it didn't take a new law, it took enforcement of the current law. But you know what drew a lot of those people? Because you might have been down there once. I've been down there dozens of times. Taking more people from Congress down there than anybody else here. And you know what those people told me? They're coming here because they do. They do want. They wanted to get to places, and they would name Chicago. They would name New York to me. I'd say, why the heck are you crossing here and not crossing at Del Rio? Because you guys offered sanctuary policies. They believed that they would be protected in your jurisdictions. And now that these millions of illegal aliens are here, permitted to get here by the Democrats and the Biden administration, your jurisdictions actually hinder the enforcement of immigration laws because of the sanctuary policies you've adopted. And then you have the temerity to complain about the influx of illegal aliens that strain your social services. Well, you did that. That's not even an unintended consequence. That's what it is. So I'll ask you, Governor Walz, do you agree with your Attorney General's opinion stating that it's not lawful for Minnesota counties to hold people for immigration authorities, even if there is an immigration warrant? Do you agree with his statement? That's his statement. It's not yours. I just want to know if you agree with him.
Yeah. Well, I know you know this, Congressman, that all 87 Minnesota counties follow federal law.
I don't know that. I just want to know. I don't know that. Why would I know that? I'm just going by your Attorney General. He says not to do it. Do you agree with the Attorney General? That's all I'm asking.
The Attorney General is elected independently in Minnesota. Nothing in his opinion allows it in Minnesota.
So are you telling me you disagree with him?
Could I have 20 seconds just to say?
I just want you to answer the question. You're not answering the question.
I served here, Congressman, and there's a respect to the witnesses to just be able to speak.
Yeah, there is, and there should be a respect, and that respect from the witness should be to answer the question.
Our counties and jurisdictions can do whatever they deem necessary. They have to.
Do you agree with your Attorney General? Apparently, we don't know because you're not going to answer. You're going to be oblique about it. So
that's unfair characterization. I'm trying to answer. I'm not the Attorney General of Minnesota.
Do you agree with his memo? And you're killing time because you're filibustering. Do you agree with his memo? That's all I'm asking.
Nothing.
And you don't want to even answer it. You say, maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know. Let's go to you, Governor Pritzker. A lawsuit was filed against you in the state of Illinois. And you responded. Your response to the claim is that Illinois has a quote constitutionally protected choice not to assist federal authorities with deportation, close quote. Give me the constitutional reference you're making there. What are you referring to?
Congressman, I don't know the lawsuit that you're referring to, and I don't know that I was the respondent in that lawsuit. I can say that
this is from the response filed on your behalf. So you didn't read the response? Well, let me then ask you, if that is the response officially of you, how is that consistent with Arizona versus U.S.? It's not. How is it consistent with 8 U.S.C. 287 D3? It's not. Let's just cover it in the last 18 seconds. When you guys say we do give these people information only on a criminal warrant. Is there any distinction in 8 U.S.C. 1373A, 1324, 1324C that says, yeah, you don't have to give information, you don't have to provide the body, you don't have to respond to the ICE detainer? Is there anything in there that says there's a distinction between the criminal law, the criminal warrant, the criminal detainer, and a civil warrant, civil detainer? Is there anything in there? The answer is no. I'll answer for you. You do violate the law. You are sanctuary cities. And every one of you sitting there, if you don't know that by now, you should know it walking out of here, that you are actually committing a federal crime every time someone does that. Because you don't have the authority under federal law or under the Constitution to negate even a civil warrant for someone who's violated a federal offense when you get a detainer notice. Yield back.
Chair, that's Mr. Frost from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All over the country, people are protesting non-violently President Trump's treatment of immigrants, and they are right to. And I think it's important that we are clear as leaders about what's going on in this country right now. There is no mass deportation campaign. Deportation is a process that is not being followed right now. What's going on is people are being snatched up in the middle of the streets, trafficked, kidnapped in the middle of the streets, trafficked to other countries without due process. Trump is taking blatantly illegal and inhumane actions to stoke protests and then escalating things from there. Over the weekend, he sent the U.S. troops to California. This is dangerous. First, the California National Guard without the governor's support, and now the Marines. The Marines are trained to fight and win wars, not to de-escalate a protest in the heart of an American city. Members of our armed services have sworn an oath to the Constitution. They didn't swear an oath to Donald Trump, and they're not his personal army. And so in the face of a wannabe dictator, we have to have strong opposition. First, the Trump administration says they're going to arrest judges. Then they arrested a judge. Then they talk about arresting elected officials. Then a mayor gets arrested. Then they said they'd arrest a member of Congress, and one has been indicted. Democratic member of Congress has been indicted. And now we have Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, who's threatened to arrest the California governor. And I don't think we should take this as an empty threat. Why is Trump now saying he wants to arrest governors? It's because he knows that some of the people who are going to be the greatest opposition to his lawlessness are Democratic governors standing up for their people. And so I'm just curious to hear from our three governors here today, because these things can be put forth as hypotheticals, but they're not hypotheticals. Elected officials are being arrested. This is happening. The DOJ is being weaponized against us. So if federal agents were to come to your door, to the governor's mansion, approach your security staff to arrest you. You have Tom Homan on the news saying, I want to arrest Governor Hochul, Governor Pritzker, Governor Walz. What do you do? What do you say? I'm just curious. Governor Hochul, if you can start.
If Tom Homan comes to Albany to arrest me, I'll say, go for it. You can't intimidate a governor. What is this country coming to? When people can threaten us on social media and on cable news and try to stop us from doing our jobs. We're here on the front lines every day, fighting to defend our rights, our values, and the public safety of our residents. And so anything threatening our responsibility is an assault on our democracy, nothing short of that.
Thank you, Congressman. Let me begin by saying I have the highest duty to protect the people of my state. And indeed, if Tom Homan were to come to try to arrest us, I can say, first of all, that he can try. I can also tell you that I will stand in the way of Tom Homan going after people who don't deserve to be frightened in their communities, who don't deserve to be threatened, terrorized. I would rather that he came and arrested me than do that to the people of my state.
Thank you, Congressman. And I just sitting here listening today again, there's many of you in here, I have friends on both sides of the aisle that I served here. The job of governor is very different than the job you're doing, but we need you. We need to work together. No one here wants to hear these horrific stories, but we have a job to do on limited resources. And equating that not doing ICE's job means we're not cooperating. We're patrolling our highways. I'm proud that Minnesota's the state third lowest in traffic deaths. If we start doing all the things at ICE, and nothing we do precludes them from doing their job. And so threatening and political, and I did not realize, I guess, I watch it, I didn't realize how much animosity there's here. We have a responsibility to the American public to work together, and I think threatening arrests on elected officials, Congressman, it doesn't help any of us. Governor Pritzker's right. Our citizens are scared and angry, and it's not necessary. We can fix this with a bipartisan border bill. Help us out.
Thank you, Governor. I want to end by saying former Governor and now Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem just last year said that federalizing the National Guard would be a direct attack on states' rights. And now she's cheering it on. President Trump has consolidated power so much in his own party, there's little to no, pretty much zero, opposition left to his lawlessness. We hear it in this room right now. The last thing I want to say, too, is what's going on right now is not just a distraction from the fact that they want to pass a massive tax break for the richest Americans and take away services and things from working families, but it's to enable it. These aren't two different stories, because the only way you rip away health care from 15 million Americans in this country and not feel like you have to fear for your job or that you're going to be protested every day is by scaring the people and suppressing their First Amendment right. What's going on in Los Angeles and what this Donald Trump wants to do around the nation is directly connected to the fact that he's going to take away health care from all of these people, 15 million Americans, to benefit people like him and his donors. And it's shameful. These aren't two different things. It's the same thing. I yield back.
Chair recognizes Mr. Higgins from Louisiana. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Governors, I guess thank you for being here today. This was staged to be, it was bound to be political conflict. But I like to get pretty real with each of you. I know Governor Walsh pretty good. He and I came to be, believe it or not, America, Governor Walsh and I came to be, quite frankly, I consider him a friend for many years. And it was fascinating that we disagreed on almost everything politically. I doubt there was a vote we had in common, but I'm pretty sure I could call Governor Walsh and get a straight answer, even now, at least in private. In a setting like this, it's difficult to get a straight answer because you're being viewed so closely. All of us are. So I'm going to try and be real with you. And Governor Pritzker, I don't know you. Governor Hochul, I don't know you. I can tell you that you strike me as extremely political, rather arrogant, quite smug, good lady. And this is a serious topic, man. We have hundreds of thousands of Americans dead from fentanyl that came across our border. Our nation suffered generational trauma for 4 years from open border policies. And we listened in ad nauseum, speech after speech after speech about how Mayorkas, who struck me as equally smug in many horrific meetings, said we need more money, we need more laws. We never needed more money, we never needed more laws. We needed an executive branch that had the will to enforce the law and thus end the trauma that the American people
were continually suffering at our southern border. Now, the impact of that policy remains, and sanctuary cities are a large part of this thing. And I don't know the life of you three, your background. I don't know if you've held the hand of a mother or father, had to deliver to them the news that their child had been killed by a violent criminal. Prayed with that person, but I have. The victims of crime commonly have a simple refrain. Why? Why? Why did this happen to my family? And I'm going to ask you, Governor Pritzker, and you, Governor Hochul, what do you say to those people when, have you ever had the courage to speak with one in person, in private, without cameras? And when they ask you why was this horrible person invited to Illinois or New York? Why do your sanctuary policies encourage, why did this guy that killed my daughter, why was he in my state? Why?
Representative.
Don't tell me it's limited resources.
Representative.
Don't tell me it's limited resources. I'll let you know when it's time for you to answer the question, madam. Don't tell me it's limited resources, because we're talking about the resource of righteousness and goodness. And God controls the bank of righteousness and goodness. There's no limit to that withdrawal. Governor Pritzker, what do you tell a family when they ask you why? Why was this murderer in my state that came here across the border illegally and was encouraged to come to my state by your policies? Go.
You said invited or encouraged. 50,000 people were 50,000 people were shipped to my state by Board of State Governors. I'm not beating it. I'm telling you, 50,000 people were shipped to my state by a Republican border state governor.